Good afternoon. My name is Amy Semenya, and I'm the Exhibit Hall Manager with the Ohio Dental Association. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to participate in this webinar today. The ODA and the Annual Session Committee work very hard to provide enough resources for you so you can have a successful experience at our show, which of course is very important to all of us. Before I introduce our presenter, I just wanted to go over some of the information that's available on our website. You'll see the link there. This is where previous webinars are stored, where important informational articles are available to you, and also a link to, quote, Ask the Trade Show Expert, where you can email Jefferson, who's our presenter today, directly with any questions you have about exhibiting. Also, I wanted to point out and make sure you know that we're having a live panel discussion during the annual session. This is Friday morning, 8:30 to 9:30 before the exhibit hall opens. It'll feature a panel of various dental professionals, and it'll cover their various experiences at dental meetings and in exhibit halls, and what they have come to expect and what they would hope to get out of shopping in an exhibit hall. So you won't want to miss that. And Jefferson, I think I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Amy, and thank you all exhibitors, everyone on this webinar. How cool is it to be exhibiting with an association like the Ohio Dental Association that cares enough about us as exhibitors to not just rent us concrete and hope it works out, but to actually provide us a blueprint, a game plan on how to make sure we get value and return on investment. My name's Jefferson Davis. I've been around the trade show industry about 30 years. I've actually done a fair amount of exhibiting in the dental industry. Back in the early 90s, I was working with a company that was selling intraoral cameras. And during that run of really applying a lot of things I've learned over the years, we've written about $10 million in business from trade shows. So I know your industry, I know your reality pretty well. A couple of things here. I would encourage everybody on this webinar to subscribe to my trade show turnaround blog. You'll see the URL on the screen. Me and my team are on 40 to 50 trade show floors a year. And through the blog, we're going to be continually posting the latest and the best practices and giving you right off the front line of show floors photographs and commentary of how to really create an exhibit that rocks. We do a fair amount of dental shows, so some of those will be coming straight from dental shows. And if you ever want to talk trade shows, you can set up a complimentary, what I call a turnaround consultation by calling or emailing or visiting my website. So let's get started here today. Hopefully you've got your workbook, you've got a pen, you've got a calculator, and all your background distractions are shut down so we can dive into this. Okay, so I have a pretty provocative image on the screen here, and the point I want to make here is that whatever sales, if you're in a position where you can write orders at the show, whatever sales you get at the show are the tip of the iceberg. The leads also are the tip of the iceberg. What you can get over time with a good lead management process will blow your mind. For many exhibitors, when the doors close, the show's over. For highly successful exhibitors, this is where the real work begins. So we're going to really take a deep dive today on the process of trade show lead management and share with you best practices that combined with the clients I've worked with have generated almost $800 million in trade show results. So this is rubber meets the road stuff. This is best practices. There's no sales pitch here today. We're only here to provide education and make you aware of how to quickly, massively improve your lead management process. So let's talk about leads. Let's come in and kind of get our brains really dialed in on this topic for these next 35 minutes we'll be together. And I want you to write these answers down in your workbook. And remember, if you don't have your workbook, you can grab it on the handouts tab on your screen. But the first question is this: when you think about success, the success of your exhibit program, How important are leads? Write that down. Second, how do you currently capture leads? What is the physical tool that you use? Do you take business cards? Do you have a paper lead form? Do you rent the show system? How do you do that? Go ahead and jot it down now. Number 3, do you know what becomes of your leads? Could you look back at your last trade show and take every lead and know what the ultimate disposition of the lead was? Whether they bought. Well, actually, let's back it up. Whether the lead was followed up on, whether there was a quote or proposal, whether they bought. If they did buy, what did they buy and how much did they buy? If they didn't buy, who did they buy from and why not you? And finally, do you set specific lead goals for your trade show program? Do you come in with a very clear goal that you've thought through and planned through? So that'll lead me to my first behavioral poll of the afternoon. I'd like to find out amongst our group of exhibitors online here today, do you set specific lead goals for trade shows? You have 3 answers. Click the radio dial that applies. Yeah, you do. No, we don't. Or kind of, but we've kind of got a catch-as-catch-can approach to this. I'll give you just a moment to do this, and I'm looking for 80. Wow, you're fast. You guys were well over 80%. Let me share the results. I think it's really instructional for everyone to see, what's happening with our colleagues. So 25% of us do. For the 25% who do, I'm curious as to how you do that. Do you basically look back at your last show and say, well, we got 100 at our last show, so we'll go for 110 this time? For those of you who are in the somewhat range, you probably know that leads are important, right? You say, hey, we need to get leads, but you might not have any method or science into how you do that. And for the 56% of you who said you don't, I'd be curious as to why not. And you'll see as we work through this webinar why it's critical and how to do it. So thanks for sharing on the poll, some great feedback. So let's keep on rocking here. Now, let's talk about lead management. I'm going to share some insights. Some of these are going to be quite eye-opening, some of them a little disturbing. Okay, here's the first reality, okay? If you're not writing orders at the show and you ever hope to get return on investment, the real product, the thing you walk off the show floor with, is leads. Stated another way, if return on investment is the name of the game, lead management is the playbook. Okay, so just remember that if you ever want real return on investment, leads are the product, unless you're writing it to show. And even then, you can still get so much more, as I mentioned, with the iceberg analogy. Here's a pretty scary statistic. According to the Center for Exhibition Industry Research, 87% of the leads captured at a trade show, according to the attendees, are never effectively followed up. Worse yet, 76% of salespeople who receive trade show leads. So maybe you're a manufacturer who sells through a dealer or a distributor or maybe a rep group, but 76% of the salespeople who receive trade show leads view them as cold calls. Now think about that for a minute, right? That is a very shocking statistic. I have a serious problem with this statistic. So a dentist or a assistant or a hygienist or a practice manager walks into your booth. They engage your staff. They're interested in your product services. They let you scan their badge. You send it to a salesperson. The salesperson views that as a cold call? We got some work to do here. I don't get it, right? So, but you'll also notice how number 3, the 76% the view, plays into the 87% that are never followed up. And number 4, 43% of buyers who attend trade shows with purchase intent in the near future finally receive follow-up after they've made the buying decision. That's pretty mind-blowing stats, right? Because if you ask, you put 100 exhibitors in a room anywhere in America, and you ask, what are the top 3 reasons why you exhibit? Leads will usually be a top 3 reason for every exhibitor. And the stats are telling us a different story, aren't they? So interesting. So I think the problem starts with the perception of the value of trade show leads and the capture process. I saw a cartoon years back in Business Marketing magazine, and it said, question, what is the difference between most trade show leads and a fortune cookie? Answer, the fortune cookie might come true. Well, there's some humor to that. It's a bit disturbing, right? The fortune cookie, there's a better odds of the fortune than the lead conversion. And the reality is, in my 26 years as a consultant and trainer with exhibiting companies, upon engagement with my clients, the majority do not know what becomes of their leads. Okay, so we've got some work to do here. So when you look at all these insights, it starts to make you wonder, what's behind this? Why is this happening? Well, I just talked about the quality issue. The second is this marketing and sales disconnect. Marketing books the show, sales is asked or forced to staff it, often against their will. And then number 3, here's a big one, the lack of exhibit staff training. 86% of the human beings that stand on a trade show floor representing their company have never had a single hour of skills training in how to do this. They unknowingly make behavioral and communication errors that limit booth traffic, that limit sales, that limit lead quality, and ultimately limit or block the company's ability to get return on investment. And the 4th reason is the lack of clarity on what a lead really is. Let me give you an example from this week. I was at a trade show in Las Vegas on the show floor for 2 full days. We were doing exhibit evaluations of the booths in action. I can't tell you how many booths I walked into with an iPad in my hand with my E3 shirt on, and a temporary booth staffer runs up to me and says, "Can I scan your badge?" And they quickly scan my badge and they turn around and walk away. Now, what's sad about that is, number 1, I'm not a lead, right? But number 2, that company is going to go back and say, hey, look, woohoo, we got like 1,000 leads from that show. My question is this: did you really? Is scanning a badge with no engagement, no qualification, just because I'm a living, breathing body near their booth, does that make me a lead? I don't think so. And yet a lot of companies get caught in this trap because they have not defined what is and what isn't a lead. And we're going to do that today. Number 5, the lack of a closed loop lead management system. Here's what's interesting about number 5. Many exhibitors are getting a solid return on their exhibiting investment, but they can't see it. And the reason they can't see it is they can't trace the lead back to the show. So the lack of a closed loop lead management system is also contributing to this problem. So grab your pen, grab a calculator here. I'm going to give you 2 formulas and a major question to make sure that you are on point with your lead management, and also to get your sales, dealer, distributors to want to follow up on leads. The first one is calculate your cost per lead. It's a very simple formula. Take the total show investment, in my example, $25,000, and divide it by the number of leads, in my example, 100, and you have a cost per lead of $250. Is that good? Is it bad? Is it high? Is it low? Well, The average cost of a trade show lead is around $340. You're looking pretty good. But I think there's a more important number that you should be comparing your cost per lead to, and that is your average sale amount. For example, if you have a $500 average sale and you have a $250 cost per lead, Houston, we have a problem. 50% of your revenue will be devoured by lead acquisition cost. On the other hand, if you have a $25,000 sale and a $250 cost per lead, you're looking pretty good. So takeaway number one, calculate and share your cost per lead with everybody who you give leads to. Number two, there's two ways to look at this formula. Okay, the first thing I want you to write down is what your average sale amount is. And if you don't know, just take a swing at it. In my example, it's $5,000. Okay, now if I hand you 100 qualified leads, is it realistic? Is it possible that you could convert 25% of those, or 1 out of 4 of those, to business over time? And the answer is yeah. It's very realistic, right? If you're doing this right. So now when you multiply $5,000 times 25 leads with an average sale amount, right? The gain opportunity for you is to grab and capture at least $125,000 in sales. On the flip side, if you don't follow up, the loss, what you're leaving on the table for your competition to steal, is $125,000. Okay, so if we follow up, we stand to gain this. If we don't follow up, we're forfeiting and handing this to the competition. I don't think you want that to happen. Next, major question. A dentist walks into your booth. They engage your staff. They're interested in your products. They give you their badge to scan. They ask you to follow up. You don't follow up. How does that impact your company's brand in the marketplace? You know, we all know that when a customer's happy, they might tell 1 or 2 people. When a customer is unhappy, they'll tell 5, 10, 15. And now with social media, the ability to communicate through their buying group, through their study group. Here's the rule, write this down, okay? You literally is an ironclad rule. If you're not going to follow up on the lead, don't take it. Look the dentist or the assistant or the hygienist or the practice manager, look them in the eye and say, hey, based on what I've heard, I don't think we're a match for you. But you know who you should talk to? And direct them somewhere else. If you're not going to take the lead, if you're not going to follow up on it, don't take it. It can do more damage in the marketplace than good. Okay? And I might sound pretty hardcore on this, and I am. You know why? Because I come from the exhibiting world where I had to make $1 do the work of 10. I never had the big budgets. I didn't have $50,000, $100,000 to throw at one show. I always had to make $1 do the work of 10. And what I discovered over the years is that if you can't make money with a little bit of money, you won't make it with a lot of money. And if there's one place where that is absolutely true, that would be this thing we call trade shows. Okay, so some real important stuff here we're talking about, right? The cost per lead, the potential gain and loss, and the impact, and the rule. Hey, if you're not going to follow up, don't take it. So now let's get into the how-tos, okay? How are we going to bridge the gap here? What do we need to do? Okay, we've got to install a closed loop lead management process. And this graphic image here really illustrates what we're talking about. The first phase, which I have in blue, is capture, right? The capture process. Okay, that's where we have to start. What do I want? High quality leads. What is a high quality lead? It's information rich and it has a committed next action. That's what I'm talking about. Second, we got to move these leads fast, right? We got to get them in the hands of the right people for follow-up quick. You know, the value of a trade show lead diminishes by 15% per week unless the visitor requested a longer time frame. A longer time frame. So the 15% rule, the value of a lead diminishes. You've got to follow up fast. And today with technology, the ability to scan the lead, sync it with your CRM, and send out your information within minutes or hours is absolutely available to us. Okay. Next, now we got to follow up. We got to convert the commitment we got from the visitor to action. In most cases, purchasing action. Finally, we got to make it easy for the people who we're given the leads to report the progress and the ultimate sales conversion. So this would be a good time for each of you to score yourself on a 1 to 5 on these 4 phases. 5, very effective. 1, ineffective. Score yourself on these 4 phases. Anywhere that you score below a 4, which would be effective, needs attention. All right, so let's get in best practices now. Remember I said earlier, let's define what is, what isn't. See the image on the screen? A fishbowl with business cards? You'd be surprised at how many exhibitors think those are leads. Well, what isn't a lead? A business card in a fishbowl. A business card that ends up in somebody's pocket. You don't even know you got the lead. Just randomly scanning or swiping badges with no engagement, not capturing any additional information. These are not leads. In fact, you know what I would call these business cards in the fishbowl? Contestants. Contestants. Remember, 76% of salespeople say that trade show leads are cold calls. Well, here's part of the problem, right? You're handing them contestants. Don't do that. Okay. Minimally, if you're going to do a fishbowl, at least put a qualifying card that says answer these 5 questions. All questions must be answered to qualify. At least do that. That'll help you get some sense of, you know, whether they have an interest in your business or they just want to win your GoPro or your iPad or whatever else you might be giving away. What is a lead? 4 factors. Personal interaction. Somebody from your staff stood face to face and talked with this human. Questions were asked, the qualifiers. Answers were captured, documented. And the next step is identified and agreed to by the visitor. If you give me 50 leads that match up to these 4 criteria, I'll convert 15 to 25 of them to business consistently. You give me 500 business cards in a fishbowl or just random scans, I'll be lucky to convert 5. I'll probably be lucky to convert 1. So here's the takeaway. Make sure everybody on your team knows what is and what isn't a lead. All right. Now, remember I told you earlier about setting lead goals, and I was curious as to how you go about doing that. There's a mathematical formula that we can use, and it's called exhibit interaction capacity. This is a very accurate way to calculate the number of face-to-face interactions that you can physically execute in your booth. Okay, so let's do this formula together right now using your numbers. Walk through my example, but I want you to use your numbers. Okay, so the Ohio Dental Association annual session has 19 exhibiting hours. How many people are going to be standing in your booth on average for those 19 hours? Write it down. Rule of thumb, 50 square feet per booth staffer. If you're in a 10 by 10 booth and you write 4, you're going to have a problem. Too many booth staff, right? So whatever your number is, multiply the 2. In my example, 19 times 2 is 38 staff hours. That's your capacity for what? Face-to-face interaction. Now, listen carefully. I want you to pick a target number of interactions per hour per staffer. The range is 3 to 5. 3 is conservative, 4 is moderate, 5 is aggressive. Pick one of those numbers and multiply it by your staff hours right now. Now you have possibly the most important number that you'll ever understand about exhibiting. It is your total target number of interactions. It is your exhibit interaction capacity. Now, listen carefully. Not all of those interactions are going to convert to a lead. Now, the better you do pre-marketing, the better your booth's designed, the better your staff's trained, the higher the percentage of those that can convert. But as a starting point, I want you to use 1 out of 4 visitors convert to a lead. Now you have a very clear lead goal for the show. I would like some of you that are online with me today to quickly send me what your lead goal is for the show. Just type the number in, go in your question queue, type the number and press send. Go ahead and do that now. And by the way, you may very well have questions. I know I'm moving very quickly and we've only got a short, maybe 15 minutes to go here. So I need to pick up my pace, but I want to make sure that you're applying these formulas. Okay. And I see some of you have sent them in already. Thank you for participating. Do this exercise if you want ROI. This is your magic number. Okay. Next. Speaking about next, remember this: clarity of and commitment to the next step are the critical leverage points that improve lead quality. And as it says in the scripture, ask and ye shall receive. Well, the first people I want you to ask is your sales, dealer, or distributors. Ask them what information, if we could capture, would really help you understand and value the lead. Okay, so you can see that there are some typical areas that may and they may or may not be included in the badge, like the email address, the product interest and how high the interest was, the buying role, the evaluation team, the decision team, competitors they're currently using or considering, the purchase time frame, or if there's a seasonality of it, what the next action step, or anything else that you might want to know to qualify a lead. Then make sure that you customize and get this criteria into your lead capture device. Okay, key step here. Many of you are marketing who hand your leads off to sales and distributors or dealers. Here's some best practices on how to get them to actually support your lead management process. Number 1, communicate how you're improving quality. Tell them how you set the goal, how you've defined the qualifiers, how you've integrated them into the device, and how you've trained your staff on how to capture more information. Number 2, calculate and share your cost per lead. You know, when you hand a guy, so let's say that your cost per lead was $25 and you hand a rep 10 leads, that is the exact same thing as handing that rep $2,500 of your company's capital. I think he needs to know that. I think he needs to treat it exactly as you gave him a check and said, I need this check to get into the bank. So calculate it, share it. Set 3 firm post-show reporting dates: 45 days, 90 days, 180 days after, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever makes sense for you. And if you use a CRM system, integrate them into the CRM so it flashes as an action for the person receiving the leads. If you want to jumpstart the program, put a contest in play. Put an ad show, the booth staffer who captures the highest number and highest quality of leads, and then tie contests to your 3 reporting dates. You know, the rep who gets the highest number of leads to a confirmed in-clinic visit wins X. The rep who gets the highest number of quotes or proposals at point 2 wins Y. The rep who gets the highest percentage of closure and reports back the dollar amount wins Z. X, Y, Z. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. This will generate energy, excitement, and competition, which will make a big difference. And finally, this one's a little bit out there, but I tell you what, you know what, if you're spending $150, $200, $500 a lead, and you're giving them to dealers, distributors, and reps, and they're not following up, you might consider to start charging them to say, hey, we spent $250 for the lead. Transparency here, want to see our books? I need you to follow up. You're not following up. Going forward, all trade show leads are going to be $25 or $50 per lead. Let me ask you this. If somebody paid you $25 to $50 a lead, do you think they're going to follow up? Answer is, you betcha. You betcha, right? It's a little bit out there. It's a court of last resort. Try everything else first. All right. Now let's talk about your capture device here. Remember I said the problem starts with capture? There are 4 generations of lead capture devices. Collect cards, create a paper form, rent the show system, rent and customize the show system, and buy a universal lead capture system. So I want to run my second poll of the afternoon here. How do you currently capture leads? Right now, how do you currently capture leads? And I asked you this question earlier, so you should be pretty quick with your answers. And I'll give you just a moment here to complete this. All right, we're at about 70%. Awesome. Those of you who haven't polled yet, take just a moment. I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Let me share it. Okay, so 25% of you use business cards. That is generation 1. What's the problem with that? Well, what if they're not carrying a business card? Second, how much information can you capture on a business card? Third, does the business card guide you in asking the right questions and make it quick and easy to capture? Answer, no. Business cards end up in people's pockets. I'm going to recommend whatever generation you're at, try to move one step forward. Paper lead form's good, right? Staple the card. You got our questions. You'll see a lead form up on the screen here. We can build our qualifiers, but the problem with that is, what if they hand you their badge to scan and you can't scan it? I don't think that's a good message to send early on in the relationship. The other thing is, whatever people write, you have to manually transfer into some electronic system. Okay, the 4th generation would only be for companies who are maybe doing a lot of shows, buying your own universal lead capture system. Okay, so with that, what I want to do is, like I said, we're not here to sell you anything today, but what I want to do is, we do have our official show lead retrieval vendor who is, by the way, going to raffle away a free system, so make sure you complete that survey. So I've got Gabby with me from OMS Lead Retrieval Services. She's just going to give you a 60-second, quick overview of the options at the Ohio Dental Association. Gabby, take it away.
Thanks, Jefferson, and thank you guys for taking the time to watch the webinar. Some of you may have already used our lead retrieval service, and you might already be familiar with it, but I just kind of want to touch up on the 2 options that we have. The first is the Apple device rental, which you would be renting an iPad mini from us that's already pre-downloaded with the lead retrieval application. And then the second is just the Q Connection app, which is our app, and the only difference is you would be downloading it onto your own device. I also wanted to touch up briefly on a couple of the customizable features that we have. Once you purchase the device, you'll have access to 10 qualifiers and 10 questions that you can customize for your company. Kind of like a sample of these for the qualifiers, they're simple, direct, yes and no questions. So immediate contact required, yes or no, provide demo, yes or no, provide quote, things like that. The qualifier questions are a little bit more in depth and give you a little bit more information on the lead. So an example of this would be purchasing time frame, and then you have the option of a drop down. So immediate, 1 to 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 to 3 months. And so by utilizing these tools, you'll be able to download all of your leads with all of this information, and it allows you to have a better lead and not just a scan or a business card like Jefferson talked about earlier. And then as a thank you for taking the time to watch the webinar today, we are offering $20 off for anyone in the webinar on top of the free lead retrieval that we're raffling after the survey.
Okay, well, thank you, Gabby. Like we said, using lead retrieval is, to me, it's a really important thing. You have the ability to customize it. And again, you never want to be in that position where a potential new customer comes up to you and you have a great conversation and they hand you that badge to scan, and now there's a speed bump. You can't scan it. One of the biggest questions in the mind of buyers at trade shows as they evaluate exhibitors is, are you going to be in business? Like, if I bring you into my practice, your products, your services, whatever you're doing, are you going to be around? And, so they kind of make these judgments, and you never want to give any indication that you're not stable and you're not committed and you're not serious. And so for that reason alone, if there was no other reason, that's a pretty darn good one. So if you have questions on anything we've talked about so far, or questions about the lead retrieval options, go ahead, take a moment and type them into your question queue right now. And while you're thinking about that, this slide will show you, some of you said you're doing a paper form, and that's what I'm using to illustrate the thinking process. But when you design your qualification process and your capture device, there's a specific flow to it. So first you scan and you capture the contact data, whatever's in the badge. Then what is the visitor's relationship with your company? If you're doing a lot of pre-show marketing, you might want to track how they heard about your booth. And then you can get into what I call your situational questions, the type of practice, the job function or title of the person you're talking to, how they're currently addressing this current process or need or problem, what sort of challenges, problems they're facing. So those are your situational questions. And then the area of interest will be, if you have multiple solutions, you'll code, okay, what product they're interested in. And then you go to your harder qualifiers, like the role in the buying process, where they are in the buying process, the time frame. You might ask about budget or money, and what our next action is. And then always having some space for freehand notes. So this is a great example to show you how to think through your question flow and build your qualifiers. Okay, and whether ideally you're doing it electronically, but even if you're doing it paper, this will be an improvement. Okay, now I'm a big believer again in setting firm goals using the number I showed you, and then tracking my lead performance on a day-to-day and an AM/PM shift. You'll see in the example here, I have a lead goal, right? In this example, it's of 333. It's a big exhibitor, right? And you can see the show, a long show. And so at the end of the AM shift on day one, we enter the end of the PM shift. And are we ahead or are we behind? Okay, next, you want to develop a way of grading or scoring your lead. And this will help you send the A and B leads out to the field and further qualify your C leads. So what you got to do is think about what information would help you value a lead and how many codes. In my example, it's time frame, budget, and buying role. And there's 3 codes. Okay, and now I'm defining what these codes mean in terms of time frame, budget, yes, 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 no. And then I'm building this grid, and then I'm making sure that these qualifiers, time frame, budget, and buying role, are in my device and positioned as must ask questions by my booth staff. Now I can quickly put a lead into an A, B, C bucket, and I can base it on reality, not guesswork. Okay, next, somebody's got to drive this. We need a lead captain, whether it's marketing or sales management. Believe it or not, sales management is probably the best play for this. They they communicate, they make sure your lead devices are available, they monitor, that AM, PM, end of day. They acknowledge people who are really performing. They try to coach and correct non-performers. They may be the person that makes sure the lead gets from the capture device into your CRM. And they might even be the contact for post-show reporting. So assign a lead captain. These are the key roles. Next, To build that culture of lead reporting, communicate your cost per lead, inform the person's direct report manager, and the contests we talked about. Also, hold a quick end of shift or end of day recap meeting in the booth. Circle the wagons. The goal today was how many we get, how good was the quality, how much data are we capturing, what do we need to do better tomorrow. And for the marketing or exhibit manager, do a close of show report. Okay, the number, the goal, and the number, cost, your breakdown by priority, and the potential revenue value of your leads. Okay, for follow-up, move fast. Okay, first responders win almost half of the deals. If you're going to use the telephone, the best day to make follow-up lead calls are Wednesday and Thursday. And the best time of day is between 4 and 5 p.m. So the later in the day for lead follow-up call. The average exhibitor stops after 2 attempts. If you'll just add a few more attempts, you can increase both your contact rate and your ultimate conversion rate by as high as 70%. That's according to the Harvard Business Review study on lead response management. Finally, use follow-up techniques to be there when they're ready to buy, not just when you're ready to sell. So big idea. Develop your follow-up plan before the show. If you wait until you get back from the show, 3, 4, 5 days, a week, a month passes, the value of the lead diminishes. Move fast, as we said. Plan for 6 to 12 touches over the next 3 to 6 months and use multiple media. Don't just email, right? Mix up email, mail, telephone, social media, maybe even in-person visits. And then focus on delivering value, not just always trying to sell. Patient education content, materials, practice management materials, posting stuff on social media, creating a newsletter, sending samples, sending promotional products, case stories, testimonial letters, videos, just stay in touch with them and not always in I'm here to sell you mode. I'm here to help you mode. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've run just a few minutes behind the 8 ball here. Those of you that are logging off right at this minute, big idea. Number one, complete that survey. You'll get an email over the next 10 minutes. It'll have a link. It'll only take you about a minute or two to do. Your chances of winning are really high. I'll tell you that. Your chances of winning this are very high. So make sure you do that. I'm going to take a look in the question queue, and while I do, I'm going to toss it back to Amy for closing comments from the Ohio Dental Association.
Thanks, Jefferson. I just wanted to take a minute to thank everyone again for participating, and hopefully you learned something today. I know we continue to try and learn new things about how to put on a good show, how to attract more attendees, how to make the experience better for you all. So I always appreciate when people are interested in learning how to better their craft as well. Again, you can always reach me by email or phone if you have any questions about the show. I know it's another month away, but this month is going to go by quickly. So be sure to take care of everything and get all your questions answered well ahead of time. Be sure to reference the information on our website. The exhibitor resources are there for you, and also a show schedule, just the main speakers that are speaking this year, the schedule of events that are going on in the exhibit hall for our attendees. I hope you'll find it as exciting as we do.
All right, Amy, thank you, and Susie and the entire management team again at Ohio Dental Association for, again, caring enough, to not just rent concrete, but to try to help your exhibitors succeed. You're truly in the top 10% of show organizers in America. Most of you listening today probably do a fair amount of dental shows, and you're probably aware not many dental shows do this type of stuff. So Ohio Dental Association has your back. Just got a few questions in there. The first one, Gabby, will be in your direction is, what percent of exhibitors rent lead retrieval on average?
On average for our shows, it's about 30%.
Okay, 30%. I want to add to that answer. Years ago, I learned that if you want to succeed, find out what the average or the unsuccessful exhibitor isn't doing and do that. 70% of exhibitors do not understand what we're talking about here. Join that 30% who are. This question feels like it'll be in my wheelhouse. Hi, we do both paper forms and lead retrieval. Do we need to do both, or is one better than the other? I'm kind of an advocate for leading with the electronic system, but having a paper backup, depending upon how many capture devices you have in the booth and how many booth staff. That way they can start the lead capture process, whether they have the electronic or not. And I have seen situations where companies have spent a lot of time building their qualifiers and for whatever reason had a problem on site with the electronic system. So I'm in favor of having paper as a backup and an augment to the electronic. Next question. What's the reason why more exhibitors don't rent lead retrieval? I would bring it down to two things. Money. They look at the cost and they go, oh, these shows are so expensive. Is that really worth it? So money would be the reason one. And number two would be they're just not aware of how important this is to their ROI. Or number three, they're a little bit technology phobic, if you will, or maybe a laggard. They're not really embracing technology like they should be. So those would be my three. Money, they don't understand the importance, or they're a little behind the curve on technology. Gabby, is there anything you would add to that as to what you've heard as to why exhibitors don't rent lead retrieval?
Sometimes they don't really know it's available. I think it also depends a lot on whether the organization makes it known that that's an option. We have a lot of people that get to the show site and had no idea that it was even available.
Good point.
And then obviously they rent it there.
Good point. So, all right. Well, that is all I'm seeing for questions. So on behalf of Amy at ODA and Gabby QMR, I want to thank everybody for logging in here. Hopefully you have grabbed a ton of actionable ideas. Be sure to complete that survey for a chance to win a free system. Be sure to visit the Exhibitor Success and ROI Center. There's a lot of content up there. And last but not least, as Amy mentioned, I will be facilitating the panel discussion at the show on Friday morning. I look forward to seeing you and hopefully meeting you there. So thanks for logging in. Have a great rest of your day and look forward to seeing you again very soon. This concludes our lead management webinar. Have a great day, everybody.